Parama Sivi Aho Nuloke Piyeta Hari Lidhamritam Vachat Nakaschin Mriyate Tavad Yavad Asta Ihantakaha Etat Artan Hi Bhagavan Ahuta Paramharsivi Aho Nuloke Piyeta Hari Lidhamritam Vachat Nakaschin Mriyate Tavad Yavad Asta Ihantakaha Na, not, kaschit, anyone, mriyate, will die, tavat, so long, yavat, as long as, aste, is present, iha, herein, antaka, one who causes the end of life, etat, this, artam, reason, he, certainly, Bhagavan, the representative of the Lord, Ahuta, invited, Parama Rasibi, by the great sages. Aho, alas, Naloke, in human society, Piyeta, let them drink, Harilila, transcendental pastimes of the Lord, Amritam, nectar for eternal life, Vacha, narrations. This is going to be a good translation. As long as Yamaraj, who causes everyone's death, is present here, no one shall meet with death. The great sages have invited the controller of death, Yamaraj, who is a representative of the Lord. It's good to have Yamaraj as a friend, you know. Living beings who are under his grip should take advantage by hearing the deathless nectar in the form of this narration of the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. Wow, deathless nectar. Deathless nectar. Amritam. Lilamritam. Every human being dislikes meeting death, but he does not know how to get rid of death. The surest remedy for avoiding death is to accustom oneself to hearing the nectarian pastimes of the Lord as they are systematically narrated in the text of the Srimad Bhagavatam. It is advised herein, therefore, that any human being who desires freedom from death should take to this course of life as recommended by the rishis, headed by Shonaka. Om Jnanatamandasya Jnanandjana Slakaya Chakshum Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurve Namah Mukam Kutuvachalam Pumunam Hayate Gurim Yat Kripa Tadaham Bande Shri Gurum Dinadaranam Vanchakapati Vischa Kripa Sindhu Devacha Patitanam Bhavani Vaishnavi Gyo. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasti Gaura. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Ritu Amrita is the verse in the Pranamrita Amrita. I can't remember, but it means that why stay in this place of death? Why not go to a place where there is no death? So where is that? Spiritual world, no death. I was just listening to Prabhupada. The gopis, they thought of Lord Srimad to be not very bright because they made bodies with eyelids that close, so they couldn't see Krishna for that moment. So Prabhupada's in the spiritual world, their eyes don't close. Demigods also, their eyes don't blink. Pretty amazing, huh? And Prabhupada said, but here, our eyes close, and we like it when our eyes close for a long time. Sleep. Radhesham told me that there was one boy in the school, the dormitory. He was sleeping all day long. He would go in there, he would sleep, and he'd go in there later on, a few hours, he's still sleeping. And when he finally woke up, he said, Radhesham said, "Boy, you slept all day." He said, "Yeah, I don't have any tests coming up. There's nothing to do. I'll just sleep." It's amazing. So yeah, unfortunately, sleep is an attractive feature in the material world. Ignorance. Why? Because then you can forget all worries, just relax, forget all worries, and just go into the no zone land and just snoozing. Unfortunately, during class, I'm also guilty of it. During class, Bhagavatam is the cure for insomnia. So, because it's it's philosophy. So sometimes, therefore, some devotees are very good at making devotees laugh because that keeps you awake. Kesava Swami was giving a class. He said, "Just like in Bhagavatam, you got to keep people laughing, otherwise you go to sleep." And he's good at it. He's good at keeping people laughing. It's hard to sleep when you're laughing. One devotee is giving class. He said, "But when you're taking prasad, nobody sleeps." Although one time I was so tired, I was eating, I was sleeping. Jayapataka Swami, he would come into to L.A. He was he was an amazing person when he used to. I think he still travels, but he would come into a city for like a day and then fly out again. And or yeah, just sometimes just a few hours, just to give a class and move on. And he would be giving class sometimes, and he would go to sleep while he's giving the class, and then he'd wake up and he'd start off where he was left off. I think Prabhupada also did that sometimes. He would be so tired because he was also, just constantly preaching and traveling. And when he would be giving class, he would and he'd wake up and start off where he stopped. So he's like, wow, that's absorption. So, and this is what happens when we take Krishna consciousness very seriously. We just get absorbed in Krishna. Uh, and in the spiritual world, they're absorbed in Krishna. So Krishna's inviting us. Yeah. He's coming to help us out of this material world. Just like a parent finds out the child is in jail, and it's sad news. But 99% of the time, they bail them out. Sometimes they're so bad, the parents let them stay in there. They learn a lesson. But in general, they bail them out. So Krishna comes. We're his parts and parcels. We're his children, and we become criminals, stealing from Krishna. So we're in jail now, and Krishna comes and tries to bail us out. Speaks the Bhagavad Gita. sends his devotees trying to get us, get us back home, try to get us to be good citizens again. Just like it's said that the people that back in the old days, if there was a criminal, they were called outlaws. Outlaws. The cowboys were called outlaws. Jesse James and people like this, outlaws, because they didn't care for the law. Outlaws. So at one point we didn't care for serving Krishna. We wanted to be Krishna. So we became outlaws. So now we're trying to become good citizens again. Big challenge. Big challenge to become good servants of Krishna again. But if we don't become good servants of Krishna again, then we have to go through the whole cycle again. Prabhupada said the greatest fear of a devotee is to again enter into the animal species. So we don't want to do that. We want to get our spiritual bodies back, our Siddha Swarup, our original form. Otherwise we have to go through this birth and death. I found out recently about this, there was a devotee, Ganashyam. He's a priest in a hospital. Sometimes in the hospital, people want some guidance. So this lady had an unusual experience. She had a cardiac arrest, and the Yamadutas came to take her, and she understood. These guys are going to take me to hell. She just knew. So she said, no, I promise I'm going to serve God. Let me stay. I promise I'll serve God. And she said it so intensely, they let her go. She was a Catholic. And she told the hospital employees, can you please send me a Catholic priest? I got to speak to him about this experience I had. So a Catholic priest came, and she explained what happened. And he said, no, it was just a nightmare, just some illusion. She said, no, that was real. Mm-hmm. I was being taken from my body. But he couldn't figure it out. He couldn't say any further. So then she asked the hospital authorities is there any other priest here? And they said, well, yeah, there's a Hindu priest here. Ganashyam, devotee, ISKCON devotee. So she explained to him what happened. He said, yeah, those are called Yamadutas. And you're right, they were going to take you to hell. But because you sincerely said to them, now you're going to serve God, I promise, let me stay. They let you go. So now you have to keep your promise. But she said, but I was a good Christian. Why would I go to hell? And he said, well, now I'm going to tell you sinful things that you're not aware of. To eat meat is sinful. They're also God's creatures. And by eating meat, you're killing. You may not be personally killing the animal, but you're paying for the meat. And you take that back, and there's an animal being killed, and you're paying for that animal to be killed. But they're also God's creatures. So that's a sin. To have sex life for any reason other than to raise God-conscious children is a sin. She was shocked. Wow, these are sinful activities. I never heard that in Christianity. Yeah, well, now you know. Now you know. They were going to take you to hell. So now you have to keep your promise. You have to serve God. And you have to refrain from sinful activities. She said, all right, from now, I'm vegetarian. She became vegetarian. No illicit sex. She found out from a real priest how to avoid the Yamadutas. Yeah. And a Jamya was a good Brahmana. good, paka, nice. But he saw this prostitute, this degraded person, and he became attracted. And he eventually married this prostitute. He had so many children, but it's mentioned that they weren't his children, they were her children. He was maintaining the whole family. But then he had one, Narayan, and he left his body where he was dying. He called out Narayan. The Yamadutas came. He said, "Oh my God." But then the Vishnudutas came. Well, the Vishnudutas said, "No, stop, you can't take him." And they're like shocked. This never happened before. And they, who are you? We're the Vishnudutas. And he said, he's chanted the name Narayan. You can't take him. So there's a conversation going on between the two of them. And you can imagine, Ajamil is there. He's like, well, they made a good point there. You know, the Vishnudutas. You know, so he's rooting for the Vishnudutas. Yeah. Because imagine how gruesome the Yamadutas are. My God. So they didn't want anything to do with. He didn't want anything to do with it. But the Vishnuduta is beautiful. Imagine. He got the mercy. He got to see the Vishnudutas, and he also heard them win the debate, and he went back into his body. You can imagine. He became a good devotee then. That's a good wake-up call, right? So he woke up and became a very good devotee. There's one instance where a devotee was on book distribution, and he was talking to one person who he had cancer, and he was going to a cancer clinic. He was on the stage 4, which is, you don't have much time left. Death could come at any moment. So he went to this I think it was Mayo Clinic. So he was there for some time. Now, when this devotee spoke to him, he didn't have any money. He showed him the I think it's which canto is it, fifth canto? Yeah. He showed the Yamadutas, and he showed the picture of hell, and you're like, wow, geez, that's pretty heavy. And then when he came back to the same airport, and he was looking for the devotee, and he found this devotee that he had seen previous. He said, "Do you have that book? Show me that book." And he had the book, and then he saw the Yamadutas. He said, "I saw them. I saw them." And the devotee said, "Really? When you?" "Yeah, I left my body, and they were taking me, but I said, no, no, I'll get the book. I'll get the book. I'll be good. Let me stay." And then somehow they understood the Bhagavatam. Maybe he said somehow they let him back in. And he said, "I still don't have any money, but I got to get this book. I'll give you my watch." He gave his watch for the book. Still didn't have any money. So it happened. There was one instance, actually an amazing instance of a devotee. Now we know the Yamaraj told the Yamadutas don't stop devotees, but there was one instance where they made a little mistake, and a Prabhupada disciple was in the hospital, and they came to take him, and he said, "No, no, no, you're making a mistake. I'm a devotee of Prabhupada. Hare Krishna," and they left. In his subtle body, he said, "No, no, I'm a devotee of Krishna. Hare Krishna." And they left. It's amazing. In our subtle bodies, we can also be conscious and, tell the Yamadutas, "Hey, move on." So this whole process is preparation for death. That's what we're doing. It's the final exam. It's like you're getting your PhD now. You're going to have a final exam. But the real final exam is, will we think of Krishna? We have to think of Krishna at the time of death. And if we're thinking of Krishna throughout this lifetime, then we'll be able to think of Krishna. Because it's said that one's whole life flashes before one at the time of death. So if we're absorbed in thinking of Krishna, we're absorbed in serving Krishna, then Krishna will flash before us and we'll go back home. We'll pass the final exam. So we're in this process of shravanam, hearing. We got to hear about something. So if we hear about Krishna, then the attraction for Krishna will increase. Because Krishna is all attractive. It's very beautiful. This word is here, Bhagavan. Bhagavan means he is most attractive. There's so many things that are attractive in this world. Beauty, people are attracted to beautiful people. But what is real beauty? We say beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. There's very beautiful people that are ugly on the inside. A lot of them. But there's people that are not very attractive, that are beautiful on the inside. It's like this great devotee, Yamuna Devi. Before so for many years, she was very overweight. I mean, very overweight. And someone who doesn't know her would think not very attractive. But anybody that knows her would be, oh, that's Yamuna, that's Yamuna. And the devotee, the women want to go touch her feet. Of course, the men wouldn't. Mentally, they might. Because she's such a great devotee. She's beautiful on the inside. Yeah. So this process helps one to become beautiful on the inside. Yeah. Krishna doesn't, he's not so all concerned about the outside either. It's the inside. Yeah. Like Radhanath Swami said, in the heart of one who waters the greed, the flower of devotion cannot grow. So we water the greed in the heart, the weed of greed. If we water the weed of greed, then the flower of devotion cannot grow. So we want to water the flower of devotion, and that's by this hearing, chanting, remembering. In this way, the devotion will grow. This is what we want. The devotion is there. Nityasira Krishna Prema Sajja Kavana Shravanari Surichiti Kure. It's there. It's in everyone. And therefore we're distributing books. And some people, they read, and wow. And it sparks some devotion. Like Prabhupada gives the example of a spark. If a spark falls on cement, it goes out it gradually goes out. Right? If the spark goes in water, immediately it goes out. Right? But if the spark goes on dry grass with the sun coming down, then fire comes up. So some people, they get Prabhupada's books, they read like a fire of devotion rises. Yeah. There's one devotee, he somehow he got a Bhagavad Gita, and from a devotee on book distribution, and he took it home. This is back in the 70s and 60s when people were really searching back then. You know? So he read it in 3 days. And in the back, he saw the address to the temple, Los Angeles temple, and he went there. And Prabhupada happened to be there. Imagine that. He gets a Bhagavad Gita, reads it cover to cover, goes to the temple, and Prabhupada's there. And he says, he tells the devotees, I want to surrender. And that was it. He became a nice devotee. Actually, he opened a temple in my old hometown in Los Angeles. But they're not very pious there. They burned down, they put his car on fire. So he decided this probably isn't the best place. So, because he was preaching Christianity, sometimes they don't appreciate. So this happens a lot. People read Prabhupada's books and they become attracted because Krishna is very attractive. Yeah. Shravanam Kirtan, when we hear about Krishna, then we want to chant it. And Prabhupada said that's what preaching is. You hear the message, you repeat. That's all. And he said, in this way you can become a guru. Just hear and repeat. Don't speculate. And Prabhupada was listening to a lecture. Prabhupada said, we need thousands of gurus. Now we have about 100 gurus. But to be a guru, that's not an easy thing. One guru, he told me, he said, anybody that wants to be a guru must be nuts. Because it's, you got to deal with people's lives. He's got thousands of disciples. And it's not like a mother and father. Mother and father, they have their child. And, they get to be 18 years old, 19, then they're off on their own. They're pretty much on their own. But you give them a guru, they're your children for the rest of your life. And they got problems, and they got, this and that. And there's one instance where one disciple was with Vijaya Maharaj, and he stole all his money and left. So it's it's not an easy thing. And even it's said that to be a guru is very guru nasasya spatano nasasya, that one should not become a guru if one is not qualified to deliver the dependence. One shouldn't become a guru, one shouldn't become a teacher, one shouldn't become a father or mother or demigod if one cannot deliver. So it's not an easy thing, to be qualified. You got to be so qualified to deliver the dependence from the repetition of birth and death. So, but it's possible by the mercy of Krishna. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, hearing, chanting, remembering. Like Yamaraj, he was one of the great Mahajans. He was on this level. Swayambhur, Narada Sambhu, Kumara, Kapila Manu, Prahlada, Janaka Bhisma, Balya, Vyasakir Vayam. So these are the Mahajans. Lord Brahma, the first Mahajan. Swayambhur, Narada Muni, my favorite demigod. And Narada Muni is just like my hero. And actually, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, amongst sages and the demigods, was it? I'm Narada Muni. I am amongst the. It's something like that. Narada Muni is such a great personality. So Swayambhur Narada Sambhu, Lord Shiva, Vaishnavanam Yatha Shambhu, a great devotee. Great devotee. Sometimes people they worship Shiva. We see people on book distribution. So I tell them, Lord Shiva, he's a great devotee of Krishna. And if you worship Krishna, then Lord Shiva is very pleased. The better you worship Krishna. Kumara, the four Kumaras. The four Kumaras are such great devotees. They were just children. They were just children. But they were smart. Very smart children. And they knew that if we get older than 5 years old, sex desire is going to enter. So they were such great saints that they didn't get older than 5 years old. It's amazing. And they traveled the universe preaching. Yeah, amazing. And they even wanted to go into Vaikuntha, but they were stopped by who? Jai and Vijaya. Yeah. So great devotees. Boy, I wish I would have done that. Wouldn't that be nice? Never experienced lust in your whole life. They never experienced lust. 5 years old, never experienced lust. Wouldn't that be nice? They were smart. Kapila Muni, another one of the Mahajans. Natatasha Vivekla. He said to his mother, he says, of all types of suffering and bondage that arise in the material world, none is greater than the suffering and bondage that a man and a woman experiences in the association of the other. That's the greatest suffering. Because a lot of attachment. And sometimes you get disappointed. Anybody here ever been disappointed? Yeah? Yeah. It's the nature of this world, disappointment. But there's no disappointment with Krishna. You know, it's actually not possible that there's any woman in this world or any man in this world that can fully satisfy the opposite sex. Why? Because we're under the modes of nature. We have imperfections. Yeah. But Krishna is so great, he can satisfy unlimited. He can fully satisfy unlimited living entities, and he does. Not only can he does. There's no woman that can fully satisfy it. There's no man that can fully satisfy any woman because we have imperfections. We're under the modes of nature. That's why there's so much divorce, so much frustration. One lady there, she was, maybe you were in the class too. She said, how do you deal with silent suffering? In other words, they're married. I was talking to one devotee. He said he's been with his wife for 7 years. They haven't spoken to each other because they'll fight. So they just decided let's just keep a truce and just not talk. Just they live. In other words, they're together, but they're alone. Amazing, huh? So this doesn't happen with Krishna. If we have a relationship with Krishna, we'll be fully satisfied. And it's always, the pleasure is always increasing. In this world, the pleasure decreases very quickly. Just like you have a job, and it's, yeah, this is all right, it's a good job, you know. But then after a while, I'm out of here. So that's the nature of this world. But now with Krishna, it's like it's described that happiness in the mode of goodness, it's bitter in the beginning and nectar in the end. Yeah. And mode of passion, nectar in the beginning, bitter in the end. One householder, he told me this, he said, I was so happy when I first got married. And I was thinking, why do people look so down on household life? I'm so happy. But then a few years down the road, he said, now I know why Krishna said that. It's exactly true. It's nectar in the beginning. I was so happy. Now he's not divorced yet, but it's heading that direction. You know? Krishna's the wisest, right? So he gives us so many hints on how to be happy. You can actually, and Krishna explains how to capture the heart of Krishna. How do you capture the heart of Krishna? He says, Ya idang paramanguyam mad bhakte sabhashisi bhaktim mam mame vaishya sansa. He said, anybody who is distributing this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita is very dear to me, and there'll never be anyone more dear to me. So we're helping Krishna bring back his fallen children. Yeah. So he's so pleased. This is how to capture the heart of Krishna. So then there's Swayambhu Narada Samu Kumara Kapila Manu Swayambhuva Manu again. Swayambhuva Kapila Manu Palad Maharaj, another great Vaishnava. Janak Maharaj, another amazing. He was a king, but he's one of the Mahajans. You know, it's like Ambarish Maharaj, another amazing example. A king, but great devotee. Bhishma Dev, he fought against Krishna, but he's one of the great Mahajans. And then Bhishma Bali Maharaj, he was a demon, but he became a great devotee. Prahlad Maharaj also, born into a demoniac family. Both of them Mahajans. And then Yamaraj, one of the Mahajans. So any question or comment or correction? Yeah.
So this description of Yamadutas that is given in Srimad Bhagavatam, is it true for, as you mentioned the story of Christian lady, is it true for everybody? Or as Prabhupada says, even a good Christian goes back. Prabhupada says if a good Christian follows Jesus, then he will also go back to the spiritual world. So, I mean,
Well, there's Christian vegetarians. You gotta be vegetarian. You can't. It's like in Christianity, there's a group called the 12 tribes, and they're all vegetarian because was it the 12 original disciples? I don't know if they're vegetarian. I don't know, but this group and they're very nice people. Very nice. Sometimes I see them when I was traveling in book distribution. They're best Christians I ever met. The 12 tribes. You can look them up online. Yeah. Good Christians. They're all vegetarian. That's part of their thing. You got to be a vegetarian. And very nice, mode of goodness Christians. The best Christians I ever met.
So what is their realization? Because they are saints in every tradition group. I mean, just like we have Sanatana Goswami, Rupa Goswami, even in Christianity, heard of Saint Francis.
Saint Francis is vegetarian. Yeah. And the followers, back then, they were vegetarian. Now they're not. Now they're all eating meat. Practically all of them.
They give any, just like we read the books by Sanatana Goswami, wrote Brihad Bhagavatamrita.
Yeah.
So he gives this details about the spiritual world. So are there similar descriptions given by other saints from other traditions that this is how the spiritual world looks like?
No, there's no description. They don't have, in Christianity, there's no description of the spiritual world. So therefore Prabhupada said that there's the abridged and there's the unabridged dictionary. So the abridged is also a dictionary, but the unabridged, it's the superior. It's the most authoritative. So in Christianity, there's other religions are bona fide, but there's not as much there. In Christian consciousness, this is the unabridged, the pure, complete knowledge, not only of this world but of the spiritual world. Christianity, they have no understanding of the spiritual world, zero, Well, they have some, you enter into the pearly gates. If you're a good Christian, you enter through the pearly gate. That's all they know, the pearly gates. And maybe there's some, the people are blowing horns or something. There's nothing practically, no information of the spiritual world in Christianity. But we have so much information of the spiritual world. So this is what makes, not that we think we're better, but we have higher knowledge. Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. So much information, a wealth of information. So, therefore we want to give it out and let people know that the spiritual world, nice neighborhood, best neighborhood, better than Beverly Hills or Palo Alto or all these places. Probably more suffering going on there. In LA, there was an instance where in Beverly Hills, two boys, they killed their parents. Do you remember hearing about that? Yeah, there was, I think one was 10 and one was 12 or something like that. But the parents must have been harassing them so much. Imagine killing your parents. I mean, that's like heavy. Killed them. And they thought they'd have some sympathy because they were being tortured. But no, they're still in jail. But the material world, imagine, harassing your children so much that they kill you. And then they got to go to jail for their practically their life. Who knows how. They're trying to get out now. I just read something. But the material world is just, here they are in Beverly Hills, everybody, dreams living in Beverly Hills. Suffering everywhere in the material world, but not in the spiritual world. So therefore we're trying to make arrangements. Yeah. Okay, anything else?
This is a question I was asked by a devotee, and I gave an answer, but I wasn't confident in it, so I wanted to see your thoughts because you kind of touched on it. When we have devotees that go into Grahastha life, how come there's like so much divorce? Like you would expect that, since you have people that are practicing Krishna consciousness, that the divorce rate would be less, but you see that it might be the same or if not more. I was curious if you had any comments about it.
Well, I was just thinking about this morning also. People change. Like I have a friend who married a devotee, nice lady, and she was actually joined the movement when she was like 16, never practically didn't sin. Nice lady. But at one point, she gave up Krishna consciousness. She's just not practicing at all. And he's trying to deal with it. He's got his son there also. It's hard for him also because his mother's not practicing. That makes it, because generally the children are most attracted to the mother. So he's not practicing, and he's not around any devotees. So people change. You may get married and nice devotee, but they change. One devotee told me he married a lady. He thought she was a nice devotee, but she changed. He said, Vijaya, with words, I cannot tell you how much I suffered. So painful. And the men also cause suffering to the women. It goes both ways. It's not one way. It's just people change. Sometimes the man becomes a non-devotee, and she's a devotee, but know what to do. Sometimes the men they abuse the women physically. They beat them. I've heard even senior devotees, beating their wives. Yeah. So the material world is just. Prabhupada said, spiritual movement in the material world, very difficult proposal. spiritual movement in the material world, very difficult proposal. Everything is difficult here. Having a temple, having disciples, having guru, having wife, having husband, just everything's just difficult. You're welcome. So better just focus on Krishna. We won't be disappointed. Okay. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Yeah.